Are you able to see my screen?
Yep, you're all set.
Awesome. Hi, everyone. Like Katie said, today my agenda is to talk to you about Exor and all of the new features that we've brought in with one of the biggest releases that we've had recently, Exor 8. In today's session, I just want to cover the high-level objectives of why we even brought in the major release and what's in it for you. And if you're interested, how you can possibly transition from, if you are currently on Exor 6 to Exor 8. So with that in mind, I want to move ahead with the presentation. But like Katie said, drop in your comments, drop in your questions, and we'll make sure that towards the end of the presentation, we keep enough time so that we can answer as many of them as possible. Before we go into the Exor 8 overview, I'm sure most of you are already aware of the product and you're already using it, but let me just do a quick product introduction for any fresh eyes that are in the crowd. As you know, Cortex Xsoar is an extended security orchestration and automation platform, and it simplifies security operations by unifying automation, case management, real-time collaboration, and threat intel management. In essence, Exor can be used to integrate with all of the security tools that a SecOps analyst or a threat intel analyst uses on a day-to-day basis. We have over 900 integrations with third-party tools available in the product. You can use them to bring in incidents, alerts, cases into the product. You can then build your own custom workflows to automate end-to-end investigation and response for any incidents that you're bringing in from these products, and then work with your team members in the case management interface that is provided within Exor to collaborate, exchange comments, notes, track your activity throughout an investigation, and then finally also leverage threat intel management to supercharge and make your investigations smarter, more proactive, and leverage the product's capabilities to essentially just drive a more automated, efficient SOC. Exor has been around for a few years now, but very recently, we went through a major redesign to make this product more efficient and valuable for the SOC. One of the main reasons behind our orchestration was that Exor 6 was pretty much designed to be a product that was first used on-prem and then moved over to a hosted environment. The on-prem bound Exor 6 initially was a really, really powerful platform, but over time, as we started scaling more, adding more integrations, playbooks, use cases, onboarding multiple teams onto it, developing more and more features, it became complicated to scale a monolithic architecture that was pretty much bound to be a simple installation on-prem. Now, in this product as well, as more teams were joining in, we also wanted to give them more isolation between the platform engine and the customer content so that you could work seamlessly without having any negative impact on each other's performances. So let's say if you're running 10 playbooks at one time, you shouldn't have any impact on fetching new incidents or running a dashboard or any other tasks in the product. And lastly, as we have more and more customers onboarding on to other Cortex products that we've brought on, XDR, XIM, or Expanse, it's quite challenging for customers to bring on 3 different products with 3 different UIs and then move from one to another, having to learn the new user interface and keep transitioning from one to another. So we wanted to make this experience a lot more seamless for customers who are using the entire Cortex platform as well. So with these key reasons in mind, Cortex Exor 8, which is one of the biggest feature releases that we've brought recently was introduced. Now, Exor 8 is redesigned for the modern SOC with an intent to provide a more seamless feel between different Cortex products. So when you're moving between Exor 8, when you're moving between Cortex XDR, XIM, Expander, you would pretty much feel like you're using the same platform. You don't have to relearn a new interface and get yourself comfortable across these different UIs. It's all going to be a very seamless user interface. Exor 8 integrates essentially with the rest of the Cortex platform and all of its best-in-class products. And what it offers you is a centralized user management. So we have a centralized Cortex gateway from where you can manage all of your tenants and all of your users and their accesses and things like that. You have an enhanced user experience across the products. We've simplified the deployment and onboarding across all of the Cortex portfolio and made it very much structured and standardized. In the new product, there is a lot of performance-related enhancements that are done as well, and I will speak a little bit more on that as we move on with the presentation. But you have better auto-scalability and pretty much built-in high availability in the product. And then the automated software updates are now free of any compatibility issues in Exor 8 as well. So the customers who are interested in growing their portfolio within Cortex will, I think they're going to especially appreciate the comfortable user experience and the workflows that are simplified across all the products now. Now, one of the biggest changes that we made in this product, aside from the UI that is now going to look a lot more seamless, is in the architecture of the product. As I mentioned before, Exor 6 was quite monolithic. It was built for on-prem, and over time, as the usage of this product increased more and more, it became quite challenging to scale it and to have all of the different types of tasks and jobs that are running within the product be managed seamlessly. So with that in mind, we completely re-architected the architecture, completely re-architected the product, changed the underlying database, the way the different jobs were being executed in a single queue. We split that up into a microservices architecture and looked at every single component in here to see avenues where we can improve performance, scalability, and reliability. Now, Exor 8 is a product that's designed for the cloud. It's a completely SaaS-based architecture, and you would notice that the platform now, it would provide dedicated, isolated workers for playbooks, and they do not allow the workloads to share any compute resources. So what that means is that if you have a bunch of jobs running that, let's say they are processing threat intel indicators for you in the background, those jobs should not interfere with any other operations into Exor, because these worker queues are completely separated and the tasks would be handled in the same isolated manner. Now, this really helps in scaling the resources. This really helps in improving the performance of the product. Next, we have a much better data model as well. In the past, our database would sometimes cause, I wouldn't say it would make the performance slower, but I would say that there was definitely much, a great room for improvement. So that's why we completely overhauled the database and we completely changed the data model to make our querying and our DB operations much faster. We're now using GCP for pretty much all of the deployment and everything else, and I'll talk about that a little bit more in some time. But our new data model is also based on GCP or Google Cloud providers' BigQuery. This provides a relational storage engine for storing any in-flight data that we are working with. And all of this is in memory. It makes for a very fast storage engine that allows caching and state management and things like that. And it really drastically helps in performance as well. And lastly, we have also added, and we're also looking for making more and more changes here, but we've also started including several built-in components in the product. So we started with the best example here is an email server. The moment that you would onboard onto Exor 6, one of the first things that you had to go in and integrate was a mailbox, because you want to make sure that notifications are being sent out, you're getting notified about any incidents coming in, escalations, and things like that. So this was quite a critical integration, but it would still need a manual intervention in between. And what we've done is we've now provided an out-of-the-box mailbox that comes in integrated. The moment you go into the product, you would start receiving those emails, and you don't even have to go in and configure anything. Next, we've also made the provisioning and tenant management and all of that quite easy. You can manage everything starting from the support portal if users have access to the if you have users onboarded into Palo Alto support, then you can easily go into Cortex Gateway, and then you can manage all of the users and their provisioning across the multiple tenants that you may have set up in Xsoar. Next, we also wanted to give different options to our customers for deployment, even though Exor 8 has been built pretty much like a SaaS product and it's born with the cloud deployment in mind. We also provide an on-prem deployment option here. Now, Cortex Exor on the cloud side, you have a completely cloud native architecture, which is built on top of GCP or Google Cloud Provider, and it's delivered from many regions across the globe, including US, Canada, UK, Netherlands, Singapore, and Japan. Over time, we are going to bring in more and more regions so that you have, if you have any compatibility issues of storing data in a certain location, then you can have this as a workaround. We are already compliant with SOC 2 and FedRAMP Medium, and we are working our way towards getting a FedRAMP high compliance, and it's on the way, and it should be coming pretty soon. Plus, with all of this, we've also been working on a feature set equivalence for the on-prem version of Exor 8. This will have this same type of capabilities that you see on the cloud deployed model of Exor 8, and it should be easy for you to deploy on-prem, and it's definitely going to be something that will help customers who have who have stricter requirements of where they can place their product and where all of this data can go. We also are bringing in Exor for the multi-tenant architecture. So all of the managed services providers, they typically use multiple tenants to manage their workflows across multiple customers that they serve. And very recently, we also introduced Exor 8 for multi-tenancy. This is completely on cloud at the moment, and it really helps because you do not have to manage any complicated infrastructure that's traditionally required for a multi-tenant deployment that's done on premise. We would completely manage the service or the infrastructure layer here, and you only need to manage your application and any data that goes in and the workflows that you configure over it. For the multi-tenant version of Exor, we have provided completely scaled role-based access control. You can have network account users that are authenticated from the Exor or from the Cortex Gateway. You have comprehensive role-based access control for analysts and customer accounts, and it enables different levels of access for your MSSP and the admins that are coming from customer side. RBAC is also used at the main account level, and it can also be used at the child tenant to ensure that there is correct access segregation between the two. And roles can be defined either from the main account or the child tenant. A role that is defined in the main account, that's typically something that can't be shared across child tenants because it has a broader or a global scope, but you can go in and define them separately on each tenant. So it allows for a really granular segregation of access across your multi-tenancy deployment, and it makes sure that only the people who have access to view certain data or to make changes and so on in your MSSP are able to do so, and you're also able to extend it to your customers. Next, you have complete data separation. So while your main or master tenant can search for multiple different tenants and tenants can search for the master, no incident data is stored on the main account. So this allows for a really granular data separation as well. Each of your customers, if they want a completely separate tenant, and if they do not want any data to be shared between, let's say, tenant A and tenant B, then that can be handled very easily in this model. And then you can also have isolated users in this example in individual tenants who do not have any visibility into anything that's going on in any other tenant, or even the fact that the other tenant is up and available for anyone to use. So that really helps for customers who have a higher security requirement, even though they're using an MSSP. You can also have tenants be on different versions. So let's say if you have a couple of tenants that are not ready for an immediate upgrade and several others that you want to move and upgrade, then that's also something that's possible. So you can have some differences in the version of deployment for individual tenants as well. And then we have really extended our content management. This is also true for the non-MSSP side for the regular Exor 8, where we are providing really granular dev prod that is baked into the product. You can spin up a dev instance, and then you can manage your content workflow to be such that you can build in a dev environment, you can test it over there, and only once you're ready, you can selectively push the content to production. And for this, you don't have to set up a separate GitHub or a GitLab repository, and you don't have to manage it externally. You can pretty much do this natively in the product now. So our content management system, it provides you with a private content repository that you can use to manage all of this development and testing. And like I mentioned, the moment that you set up a dev tenant, it helps you manage all of this, all of the content in your life cycle. The other thing is that even with the dev prod setup, your production admin can completely control the content that they want to pull in. So just like today in Exor, you see that different applications or integrations, they come with several updates periodically, but only once you're ready, you click on update and you pull in any new changes and updates that have come in. Similarly, you can push the content from dev the moment it's ready and it's completely tested. And then you can have the admin from production pull all of that in and use it for the new version and use the new content that's being developed. I'm wondering, are there any questions that you're seeing, Katie?
Yeah, there are a couple in the chat.
We can take a few questions and then I would move on to migration and a few other things that I wanted to cover.
Sounds good.
We have time. How do I see the questions? I'm sorry.
The Q&A tool at the bottom.
I think I'd have to probably stop sharing. A hybrid model, do you mean, Isan, do you mean something that has both cloud and on-prem in this case?
We'll have them follow up with that question.
Okay. Yeah, and it's right. I mean, if the question is if Def Tenant is free of charge or not, it is free of charge at the moment. You pay for the license and pay for the production instance, and then if you want, we can spin up a dev instance to go with it, where you can do the testing and develop more content. Very few questions at the moment. So the database backend right now, we are using MySQL and Google BigQuery at the moment. So we had Bolt and Elasticsearch in the past for folks who don't know. And the other thing is in Exor 6, if you wanted to move to high availability, which was true for customers who were handling a lot of indicators, for example, and they had frequent workflows to maybe enrich them and take certain actions on them, we would recommend you to move to Elastic. And Elastic helped with high availability. Elastic helped in scaling the product a little bit more. And it was what we used, like Elasticsearch's inherent functionality was what we used for high availability. This was something that was a little bit complicated for most customers because it was managed by the customers. The Elasticsearch and how you set up the high availability and how you manage any issues and challenges that come on that side was completely customer managed. The difference here is quite significant. First of all, by changing the databases and the data model, we have made our interactions much faster. And second, you do not have to set up anything separately or manage anything separately in the product. It's all done seamlessly, and we automatically have auto scaling in the product. We have high availability in the product, and all of that is built in just like in any other SaaS platform. Any plans on adding Copilot to Exor? I don't want to speak for the product because it's quite possible that that could take a lot of time, but we just launched something similar to Copilot in Cortex XIM. So we are experimenting with features like that in our Cortex ecosystem. And in XIM right now, you have a beta version of a Copilot that's launched in the very recent release that you can ask questions and interact with and work with like any other Copilot engine. Great question, Daniel. So the goal of Xsoar is to not be a replacement for SOC. Exor is designed as a product that helps security operations. Your analysts have, when we work with even smaller organizations these days, we see thousands of incidents that come in. And typically, analysts don't have the time and energy required to look at all of those incidents and to respond to them within time, right? So, and I've seen a lot of cases where people end up prioritizing a bunch of incidents and then leaving aside a lot of the other ones. Our intent with Exor is to help you create a process for responding to incidents that you're seeing repeatedly, and often for similar incidents like phishing, like let's say a phishing incident, right? There are a bunch of steps that you would take every single time an incident of that category comes in. So what we want to do is to help you define that process and automate as much of it as possible. So typically what we see with customers who go into production with Exor, you have 80 to 90% of the process automated, the steps that you're taking every single time, like extracting details, enriching them with threat intelligence, maybe making a bunch of extra queries from a different product. And then you can come in, take the final decision of, yes, Exor said it's true positive, I also believe so. Or you can put in your approval of whether you want to block the associated source IP or the malware detected and so on. So it's to help you not do those manual and repetitive tasks again and again, so that you have more time for threat hunting and other more valuable SOC operation tasks. So XDR aggregates the data from endpoints and firewalls and sends to SOAR to help handle response. That's true. XDR is definitely just one of the sources that we handle here. We can integrate with any other tool like Cortex XDR. It's any SIM tool, EDR tool, any other similar application that you have in your environment where you see incidents coming in. And once the incident is created into Exor, you can handle the investigation and response process in Exor. So we don't do any detection on our side. We don't have an endpoint agent or a firewall correlation rule that is going to be built into Exor. But Exor can replicate the steps that an analyst takes and automate them so that you don't have to repeat the manual redundant tasks again and again. For Copilot, again, I would say just keep an eye out. We've started our experimentation with XIM. Over time, if there's something meaningful that comes out that we can use for Exor as well, we'll surely add it. And one thing I want you all to know that any of the new features that we add for any of our products, we keep a detailed log of all of it under release notes. So you also have access to all of that information. So you can anytime go in and check what's coming new in the latest version, and then use it to guide whether if you want to make a move, or if you're interested, you can always have further conversations with the help of your account teams, your customer success teams, and so on. The content promotion from dev to prod, right now, most of the features that I mentioned, they are for Exor Cloud. We are still working on bringing the Exor on-prem solution out in the market soon. It's right now planned for 2024, the first quarter of 2024. And as soon as it's out, we definitely try our best to send out a notification to all the customers so that you are aware of the launch and you can make an informed decision. On cloud, what we're doing is we set up a private content repository, and then and this is also, all of this is happening behind the scenes. You don't need to go in and set up any configurations or make any changes from your side to enable this. In the background, as you set up a dev tenant, we go and set up a private content repo. And then after that, what happens is any content that you create or change in the dev environment, we start keeping a log of all of that. Just like in any other content management system, you have the ability to mark some of them in an exclusion list so that you don't push them into production by default. And then once you're ready, once you've tested your changes, you can select those individual content items and make your comments so that your production admin knows what you're pushing, and you can just push those changes. Once you push them, they show up in the production as new updates that can be pulled by the prod admin. Yeah, I am just answering questions, so that's why I've just left this on the architecture slide. We are planning on keeping the features completely comparable between on-premise and cloud. Definitely, cloud does provide a lot of advantages that are quite native to cloud. Auto scalability and high availability are pretty much baked in here. Our intent is to have the on-prem version mirror as much as the functionality as we can provide from cloud. But do remember that we have a lot more granular control on the underlying infrastructure when it comes to a cloud deployment. So it's just the management goes a little bit more extensive when it's on-prem. You have to set up a server, you have to handle the infrastructure yourself, and an on-prem VM would probably never scale like a cloud VM, but we are still planning to keep it as efficient as we can. So whenever new updates, I'm assuming that you were talking about product updates or product upgrades. Whenever new features are released, we send out a notification to our customers and trying our best to let you know about the new features and things that have come in. You can also find out from our release notes, like I mentioned before. And if you think that you want to move to the new version, to the newest version, then you can speak with your customer success executive, and they will work with you on identifying a time when they want to plan the upgrade. And typically, when we are moving from, let's say, Exor 6.11 to 12 or Exor 8.2 to 8.3, those are not really major upgrades, and they can be done without much platform disruption, right? So they can be handled more seamlessly, and they are done automatically by our team, especially when you have the hosted deployment. When you're moving from Exor 6.8, I'll talk a little bit more about the migration in just a bit. That is going to be a huge movement, and you would have to completely take data that's in a different data model. You'd have to take up a different architecture and move it to a completely different architecture. So that's a major overhaul, and that is something that you can work with our team, and we provide a lot of support. And I'll talk about how we do that. So as a solutions provider for multiple clients, how would you license and use it across multiple clients? So I think that you're speaking about multi-tenant licensing model. In multi-tenancy, we have a small cost for each tenant that you deploy. So there's a license cost associated to that, and for the users that you onboard into Exor. So for those of you who don't know, in Exor, the license is completely dependent on the users that we are bringing in. If you, let's say, purchase 2-user license in Exor, for those 2 users in Exor, all of the functionality would be available. All of the functionality would be available. What I mean is that there are no limits placed besides that. You don't have a limit on how many playbooks you can use or how many integrations you have available. Everything else is unlimited for the users that you onboard. And in multi-tenancy, for each tenant, there is a small license cost that's associated as well, starting with Exor 8, because we do have the overhead of managing each of those individual servers that would be associated to different tenants. So again, the answer here is straightforward. If you have a separate tenant that is set up for your client, then there would be a cost associated to that. But if not, then like if you want to still work in a single tenant and kind of have all the incidents coming in the same place, then you don't have a separate cost. And there is no additional, there is no cost associated with the data volume or number of playbooks or usage at all. It's just about the number of users you have in the platform. Yes, you could aggregate all the firewalls from different clients. But again, I want to mention that Exor is a product that comes after correlation. So you typically have an XDR, EDR type product that intervenes, that takes in the logs from firewalls and other detection tools that you have set up in your environment. And you do the correlation in that product, because that's going to be much more efficient. That product is set up to handle huge volumes of data and to just process it, correlate it. Then you move it into Exor. In Exor, if you were planning to do correlation, it would be quite inefficient, because the moment that we bring in any log or event or incident into Exor, the typical workflow is to trigger a playbook associated with each of those logs or events or alerts, and open a case and spin up a UI and all of that, right? So it's quite performance intensive, and so that's why these two functions are completely separate. You have correlation done in the stage before it hits Exor, and then Exor comes in and automates the workflow afterwards. So correlation in XDR or a SIM, and then Exor comes in and it would run the automations and handle your incident. If you have MDR, yeah, I think you could still need Exor if you have your analyst team on your side working on any incident response and things like that, that is separate from the managed detection and response, then you probably do need it. But if you're just working with your service provider and they handle all of the incidents and scenarios that you have, then maybe not. So it's quite a case-by-case it's a question that's pretty much handled on a case-by-case basis. If you have any other scenarios, incidents, and workflows that you're working with internally that you want automated and that you want more visibility on, then Xsoar can help you. Let me move into the migration options here as well. So moving to Exor, from Exor 6 to Exor 8, like I mentioned, I would consider it a major migration. And here we do have a high-level plan of how we manage it. We've sent out initial notifications to all the customers who are using Exor 6 on cloud, the hosted version. And we've started notifying them about the fact that a migration option is available starting this year. And then it takes some time to first, we're working through it customer by customer, and we do not want to rush this process because we want to make sure that we're handling all of the data carefully and all the configurations properly and things like that. And we want to do it such that we don't have any downtime for your incident response workflows. So that is why our customers are typically split into different batches, and we kind of handle it individually between those. We kind of handle each batch individually. Our MSSP and on-prem migration it's still a few months away. You will probably see some notification and information coming in 2024. Maybe the first quarter of 2024. That's at least what we are planning right now. And so you should keep an eye out if you are an on-prem customer or if you're an MSSP hosted customer of Exor. For migration, our intent is to make it as straightforward as possible for the customers. So we've also created a migration helper that's available within the product. And this can help you. So initially, when you start the migration, you work with our team to carefully plan when you can have the downtime, how you're going to switch and add a few admin users into the new product, and how you're going to transport all the incidents and manage all the configurations and things like that. It is something that takes some time and careful planning, and we work with our customers in all of those stages. But once you are done with the initial migration, you would then have to verify that all the data is successfully migrated into the new instance of Exor 8. And if there are any configuration changes or updates that you need to make between Exor 6 and Exor 8, then you can carefully go through the product and do that. So to help make it more seamless, we've set up a migration helper. It's like an semi-automated wizard that can guide you through the steps that you need to verify that the migration has been completed properly. It also guides you about the expected timeline and how long you should take, or the stages that you should pass, and how you should move between the testing phase and when you should move into final production. And let go of Exor 6. So another thing that I forgot to mention was that while we are doing migration and while we are testing if everything was moved successfully or not, and if the configurations are done completely or not, we still keep the Exor 6 instance active. So remember, again, this is not an upgrade. We are not just upgrading the product within the same server. We're moving it to a different architecture and probably setting up a completely new server to host your data and the product, right? So for this, we do need to move it from one instance to another, and that needs a transition that also comes from your analysts that are using the product and using the instance. Only once it's completely ready on the other side to be used as production do we move all of them over to the new product. So as you can see from the quick chart here as well, while you are testing, while you are doing the deployment, we keep the Exor 6 instance active, and your analysts can work on that instance and continue to investigate. And then only once you've completely tested and validated everything, we would move you to production. And then once you confirm, then we suspend the instance, the Exor 6 instance that's running. So Bolt and Elasticsearch, again, they are not anymore going to be used for Exor 8. We still use Docker. We still use Dockers extensively. Podman is Podman is just a way that RHEL distributes or manages their Docker distributions. So that's unfortunately, I think, still needed. But we use Docker for containerization and Exor. This ensures that any commands that you're running that could be potentially risky, like sandboxing and things like that, Docker provides its own small containerized environment to run that. And secondly, for all the Python integrations and automations that we have in the product, we maintain the packages that are required to run those integrations within pre-built Docker images. So Docker is still going to be used in Exor 8 and pretty much in a similar fashion as it was in Exor 6. Any other questions or comments that you had?
All right.